Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. We thank GoFan and VNN, the exclusive sponsors of the UIAAA Connection. Now operating as one combined company, GoFan and VNN offer a seamless experience through digital ticketing and athletic websites. They make it easy to direct fans to one central place for schedules, communication, and tickets for both home and away events. We appreciate GoFan and VNN for their continued support and exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Weston Zabriskie, the Director of Athletics at Ridgeline High School up in Cache Valley in Utah. Welcome to the podcast, Weston.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience here in Utah, across the nation, and around the world where you grew up, where you went to high school, college, and your first job, etc.
Okay, so I grew up in Moroni, Utah, small turkey farming town. Grew up, my grandpa had a turkey farm, so I was a turkey farmer growing up. Just reference for people, it's down by Snow College in Ephraim. So grew up there. Grew up my whole life. Sports was kind of my thing. Football, basketball, baseball. You could find me watching any type of sport that showed up on ESPN. Went to high school at North Sanpete.
I was just going to ask you. So North Sanpete, obviously, where you went to school.
Yep, was a North Sanpete Hawk. Played football, a little bit of basketball, a little bit of track. Going there. Was coached by Mark Wooten while I was there at North Sanpete. Graduated, went to Snow College for a year. Took the 2-year religious break, went on mission to Russia for 2 years, came back, went another year at Snow College, was actually going into business, thought business was I always knew I wanted to be a coach, but when you get in high school and people start talking about money, one of the biggest things they talk about is teachers don't make money. So I decided I maybe wanted to go business route. Got up after graduated from Snow College, got married, went to Utah State. Was at Utah State for about a semester and decided that I wanted to coach. I wanted to coach and teach, didn't want to do the business world. So changed my major. Luckily, while I was there, Coach Wooten, who was my high school coach, had accepted the job at Mountain Crest. So I was up at Utah State, gave him a call, said, hey, can I help you out at Mountain Crest? And he said, absolutely. So went, and my first year Mountain Crest was actually 2005 when we won the state championship. So getting into coaching and you win a state championship year one usually kind of hooks you into the business a little bit, getting that success. So while I finished up at Utah State the next 4 years, I was an assistant coach at Mountain Crest. Graduated, moved back down to Sanpete County for a year, was at Manti High School as an assistant coach, working various jobs there. And then in 2010, I got hired as the head football coach at South Sevier High School in Monroe. Coached there for about 9 years. I have the most playoff wins in school history at South Sevier. Coached there for 9 years, and then was lucky enough to get the Cedar Valley High School job in Eagle Mountain. Was able to open up Cedar Valley High School. Coached there for 6 years, so I had about 15 years as head coach experience, 20 years coaching experience, and never really thought about an athletic director job. Growing up in a small town, the athletic director was basically, they got a prep period to work on their AD stuff and was a teacher the rest of the time. So, I mean, in high school and even at South Sevier, I really didn't put a lot of thought into what an athletic director does. At Cedar Valley, it opened my eyes. It was more of a full-time job, more of things like that. And I still really didn't think about it, but a lot of the guys I coached with at Cedar Valley, they kept saying, man, I think you'd be a great athletic director. Man, the way you're organized, the way you do things, I think you'd be awesome if you ever wanted to be an AD. Did you ever want to be an AD? I never really thought about it. As I coached longer and started to, feel a little bit of coaching burnout, maybe, I thought, well, I'll look into it. Me and my wife had always talked about either getting back to Sanpete County or Cache County. the Ridgeline job. I heard it was going to be opening up, kind of reached out to the principal and kind of talked. When it opened up, I applied, and I'm thankful every day that I got the job. So last year was my first year here at Ridgeline, and it's a great place to be.
That's awesome. So many follow-up questions. The first one, so you spent that time at South Sevier, so you had to have run into Amy Robinson down there, I'm sure.
Yeah, actually, I went to high school with Amy Robinson.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've known Amy since she was Amy Erickson. So yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So I was there a little bit before.
So
Amy.
you know her father John too then.
Yep, John was my history teacher. Her brother Jeff was a basketball coach. Yeah, I know the Ericksons real well.
That's awesome. Let me ask you another question. So you said you went on an LDS mission to Russia. My first question is, where in Russia?
So it's called the Samara mission. It's right along the Volga River. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, an overnight train ride from Moscow, I guess.
So you never really spent time in Moscow then?
Just 2 days because you had to leave to go renew your visa. So I went
Every
to
year.
Moscow and then went to Latvia for a couple days and then back to Moscow and back. So no, not a lot of time there.
Okay. Fascinating. And I assume a small town Utah kid living in Russia for 2 years must have been an eye opener.
Yeah, it was. One of my favorite quotes is things that just don't happen in Russia. I think it was Leo Tolstoy said that. And but I mean, great experience, great opportunity to grow and really learn how to communicate with people, how to organize yourself. Definitely helped for a lot of aspects of my life, for sure.
Perfect. Let me ask you, Weston, about the mentors you had in life, both as a young athlete and in your professional life once you got out of college.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, growing up, biggest one is my mother. My parents got divorced when I was 7. Um, Dad was in and out of the picture for a little bit. Have a relationship with him now, but my mom and grandma were huge growing up. My mom, mentored me, taught me a lot about resiliency and, dealing with your circumstances. You can't control your circumstances, but you can control your attitude and your faith and how to react to them. My grandma, I learned a lot from my grandma about how to just love and care for people, how to make people very important. So those are 2 huge influences in my life. And then I already mentioned, coaching wise, Coach Mark Wooten was my high school coach for 4 years. Then I coached with him 4 years at Mountain Crest, and still I talk to him almost daily. Huge influence. He's the reason I got into coaching. He's, still asking about questions all the time. While I was here at Mountain Crest, had a lot of mentors. Dave Caressa was a huge one that, just taught about attitude and presence in your coaching. Davey Swenson, great wrestling coach at Mountain Crest. At Manti, I had Cole Meekum, Brandon Jackson, who's at the UHSAA now. I was able to coach a couple of his kids at Manti, and we've developed a good relationship. He's been a great mentor. South Sevier, Boyd Price, Randy Madsen were 2 that were great in helping me. Cedar Valley, Sharon Martisich helped me a lot to introduce me into the athletic world and how to do things there. But always looking for people to learn from. Since I've had this job up here, Kevin Anderson at Mountain Crest has been great. Ryan Grunig, Skyview, Missy Stewart just retired at Green Canyon, has been a huge help. So it's really been great to see everybody that's just willing to jump in. Clay out at Bear River has been awesome. So a lot of people that, help me, and, my philosophy is grab a little bit from each of them and melt my own personality into it. And it's really been good.
Well said. That's kind of a who's from the UIAAA. So congratulations for being able to work with those people. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Weston. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life? And more importantly, what did you learn from it?
So you sent that question, and I kept thinking, I don't really know that I'm going to put down a big failure because I feel like everything's learned. And at every stop I've been at, I've learned. I guess one of the biggest ones is kind of accept help, leave your ego at the door a little bit. I think one of the best lines of leadership is, how can I help you? Prime example, like I said, I went to South Sevier to coach. Well, I coached at Mountain Crest for 4 years, and we were very successful. Went to Manti for a year, very successful. So a little bit in my mind, with some of the coaching is you just called the plays and it worked, because that was my experience at Mountain Crest. We called the plays and they worked, and we won the majority of the time. So I kind of got to South Sevier and thought, okay, I've got this offense that we ran at Mountain Crest. I know exactly, so I'm just going to call the plays and it's going to work. Well, it didn't quite work, so I really learned that, you have to, every circumstance is unique. Every school is unique, the way I was coached and the way I learn is not necessarily the way it works for everybody else. I get to Cedar Valley, and I'm one that coach tells me something, I remember it all the time. Or, I knew our offensive playbook. I played center in high school, but I knew what everybody on the field was doing. Come to find out, not everybody thinks like that. So, getting a daily practice plan to all the coaches was a huge thing that I learned, so I can't really think of anything that I would say is a huge failure where I was like, oh my gosh, I really messed this up. But being willing to listen to people and adjust my way of thinking a little bit to help them better understand is a lot easier than me just trying to force everybody to do things my way all the time.
Well said. So I'm interested in your outlook. You spent 3 or 4 years coaching at Mountain Crest in the early 2000s. You were still a student at USU. You go to South Sevier. You come back after Cedar Valley, so you come back up to Ridgeline. And in between that time that you were gone, like maybe 10, 11 years ago, Ridgeline splits from Mountain Crest.
Yeah.
And so now you got the 2 separate high schools. So you were not in the community when it happened, but having come back to the community after it happened, I'm interested in your outlook on, is it been 10 years, so it's just 2 separate things now, or there's still, what's your outlook on that, your take on that?
The interesting thing is both are phenomenal communities. The reason Ridgeline is such a great community is it was, a lot of roots built up in the Mountain Crest community. Both are phenomenal communities. Both have great athletic traditions. Both are great schools. I know the split had a little bit of turmoil with it a little bit, but my experience, even just looking, is most of the contention is coming from adults who have very little to do with the actual athletic side of the school. Kids today, kids are so different from even when I was growing up because of social media, because of ways to connect. Mountain Crest and Ridgeline can play a football game Friday night, and the next Saturday night, Ridgeline kids are attending Mountain Crest homecoming, and Mountain Crest kids attend Ridgeline's homecoming because they go on dates with each other. They hang out with each other. So, I think rivalry is so healthy. I think it is so fun to have communities. That's one thing that I love about Cache County is, basically between Bear River and all the Cache County schools, every week's a rivalry game. Every week has just a little bit to it, and unfortunately, I think if it does ever come up with anything negative, it's usually not involving the kids or the personnel at the schools. But, like I said, I wasn't here for the split. I know the split had some stuff definitely needed because both schools are full and at capacity. So I don't know how they could have fit in one school. But, I think both have really came out of it very well. Both are successful in what they do. The kids are great. It's been my experience. Like I said, this is my 3rd high school just in a leadership role, 5th high school overall as a coach. And I've learned very quickly that there are good kids everywhere and there are just not as good kids anywhere. I don't ever want to say, I don't think there's such thing as a bad kid. There's just kids that make bad choices from time to time. Every kid is good. They just need to work on their choices, and every school has them. And usually, in a rivalry or in any game where you're competing against somebody, the school that you're competing against, they always want to focus on all the not good kids at your school and you want to focus on all the not good kids at their school, very rarely do they focus and say, wow, look at this kid. Look how good they are, not only on the field, but in the community. And I think if schools and communities would focus more on all the good kids in the school, I think you'd see a lot of different stuff come out of rivalry games and others.
That's well said. Thanks so much for sharing that. Let me ask you now how you heard of the UIAAA, how you became involved with the UIAAA as a brand new AD.
Yeah, so that falls back to Sharon Martisich, who's at Cedar Valley. As soon as I got this job, the first thing she came to me, she said, hey, we're going to get you that scholarship so you can come to Tampa with us. She was about going to the national conference and I didn't think much of it, but of course, hey, if I can get some extra money to go to Tampa, I'm going to do it. So got that. She kind of introduced, said, hey, you got to get your membership. So kind of got the membership and then started learning about the certifications. Andy at Deseret Peak, Trevor at Stansbury have been really big helps in helping me understand what I need to do to get these certifications when there's classes being offered to help get your CAA and your MCAA. Then, of course, going down to the St. George Conference and stuff. So they kind of introduced me to it, and now I just use it as resources and getting involved to get to know other ADs, get to the classes, learn how the conferences work, stuff like that.
Perfect. Let me ask you this. In the short time that you've been an AD, this is your second year,
Yeah.
have you seen a change in your responsibilities, or are you just still drinking from that fire hose and trying to get used to it?
A little bit of both. It definitely was drinking from a fire hose. A lot of things that, it's kind of that phrase I use with a lot of times when you hire coaches. You tell coaches you don't understand what it means to be a head coach until you're a head coach. As an assistant, you think you have an idea, but then all the administrative stuff comes at you. And I think it's kind of similar at the AD level. As a coach, you're so focused on your program that you don't always see the bigger picture. You try to, and a lot of coaches are great at, hey, yeah, I'll work with these other teams, but seeing how many different ways things can affect each other. Hey, we're going to switch, football. Hey, we're going to switch our games from a Friday to a Thursday. Well, between the two football teams, that's very easy. But for me now, I've got to check, hey, where's soccer at that day? What's cross country doing? Do we have volleyball? What's all these other areas? Learning that, you got to check the UHSAA calendar all the time because they have a lot on their plate. So sometimes things get changed and we don't see it right away, or it's not communicated right away either way. So a lot of it is just making sure that you're caught up on when everything's happening. You go week by week, or day by day, week by week, month by month, but you've got to be, a few months ahead of everything else, it has been nice. It kind of fits into one of my strengths, which is organization and putting things together, but, definitely have to work on the fly and not let the little things bother you.
That is well said. Thanks so much for sharing that. I want you to speak for a minute now about Ridgeline. Ridgeline's a little than a decade, 10 years, and they've been, obviously in football, really successful, but successful in so many other sports. For a brand new school, talk about the legacy of sports that you have there at Ridgeline.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, that's part of what drew me to the school is, the success. And I mean, football is very easy to see, being a football coach. I understand football's kind of the bell cow. That's the one that everybody looks at. But I mean, gosh, we're so successful in so many things. Our girls basketball program, just a year ago, graduated probably the best high school girls basketball player the state of Utah's ever seen, and Emily Skinner. Our girls swim team has won multiple championships in a row. I added it up, just because I had to redo some banners and stuff. But I mean, in 10 years, 26 state championships, 15 state runner-ups, and I think we're at 90 region championships in 10 years. It's just a testament to the coaching staffs we have here. I got up here and not just the head coaches, but they do a phenomenal job in bringing in great assistant coaches that buy into the idea. You know, we've had some great strength coaches here that do a lot of great things. The administration, you know, I think that's something that gets so overlooked is if you have an administration that's supportive of athletics and understands the big picture, what athletics can do for your school, that is huge. So, and the community comes in with high expectations. They expect us to compete very well. They expect us to be in the top of the region standings in every sport. It's not just, hey, you know, we're good at this one, so the other ones go. The expectation is high for everybody. The kids buy into that expectation and that understanding. And so it's a lot of fun to work there. And like I said, you know, want to put my own stamp. You know, the goal is to not just do great athletes, but great people. You know, we had last year, not only were we successful, but we had over 25 academic all-state athletes. You know, the team GPAs between all of our activities was a 3.6, I believe. So, I mean, great academics as well. So it's a lot to live up to. You know, Mike Hansen before me did a great job here building things up. And, you know, my whole goal is I just don't want to mess it up. I want to make sure that it goes well.
That's certainly true. I've only been to your school once. It would have been last January or February. My granddaughter plays on the Olympus girls basketball team.
Okay.
And so they had a road game up there. So I went up with my daughter, and the girls basketball team was very good. And the other thing that surprised me is, and I don't know, obviously, because I'm a Salt Lake guy, but I was surprised that on the exact same road as your school is a Mountain Crest, and I would have thought there would have been a bigger difference between the two schools, but it's just right up the road,
Nope,
as big as Cache Valley
right
is.
there. Yeah, that was a great basketball game. If I remember right, it didn't end in our favor, but
Oh, I think it was like at the buzzer.
yeah, it was close. Scary thing is, like,
In overtime, I think it was just
yeah,
back and forth. A team went
yeah,
ahead,
well,
another team goes ahead.
and you know, there were times where we had 4 freshmen on the court for our girls basketball team this year. So, you know, next couple years, we're going to be right up there again because we're young and very talented.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this. What's one common myth about athletic administration that you would like to debunk to the general public?
Um, I'm trying to think how to phrase this because it sounds weird. ADs don't have as much power as the general public think we have. You know, a lot of times they come in and, you know, they want a coach's head, and it's like, hey, that's I can give suggestions, but I don't get the final call in certain things like that. You know, heavily influenced, but you know, you asked me to get rid of a coach. I can't just walk up to a coach and say, hey, you're gone, or hey, you're hired. You know, it has to be the principal has to approve on everything. Um, you know, and I think sometimes too, just the job description in general, like most people, and I was in the same boat. You know, they see college athletic directors and what they do. In high school, it's a little bit different. You know, times where just for me, even hosting a game, you know, people need to understand that for my job as a host, I need to be just as hospitable to the visiting team as I am to the home team. You know, I've got to provide them places to be. You know, we got to make sure that they're well taken care of, that they're protected while they're at our school. You know, we're in charge of everybody in the gym, everything that goes on outside the gym. Um, you know, we want to be as helpful as possible. We want to build our programs as much as possible, but we also have rules and people that we're accountable to that we have to answer to as well.
Well said. Let me ask you about let me ask you, you did go to Tampa at the national conference, and you've been to a couple of Utah conferences. So talk as a new AD about attending the state conference, what it was like, and then talk about your first national conference.
Yeah, so the state conference, it was great. At the end of the day, I made out pretty well on the prizes. So that was a good day. Came home with a couple of gift cards and, some cash. So that was great. But it really is, it's just an eye opener. Like, two things. Number one, gives me some ideas to come back and put my own flavor on. But for both the national and the state, it was quite refreshing to see that a lot of the stuff that I was doing was the correct things to do, if that makes sense. Sometimes I'm always worried, man, am I doing this right? And they say, hey, this is kind of how you would handle this situation, or this arises. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing it correctly. Took the law classes, and everybody says, oh, it's gonna scare you when you take those law classes, and see some of it, and it's helped with situations that arise. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, man, people can't really be that dumb, can they? And yes, they are. But also great networking opportunity, able to reconnect with people that I know, but also get to meet a few other people and see different perspectives, see how things look differently. Really grateful to be in Utah, because I look and I think we have a great organization, and we have a lot of great schools and athletic directors here in Utah that make things run really well. I feel like, you see all these troubles, and Utah's name doesn't come up very often in a lot of those. So it's wonderful to see that.
Thank you for sharing that. What's the favorite part of your job, Weston?
Just the opportunity to be around the youth. That's why I loved coaching. The opportunity to influence youth, get to see them, talk with them every day. I love where I'm at. The administration's been awesome. It's nice not having to be stuck to a bell schedule. I love teaching, but it's kind of nice that the bell rings at the end of first period, and I don't have that rush of like, oh man, I haven't finished what I'm doing. I can just keep on working. Again, the relationships I'm able to build and see, it's fun. Like I said, I grew up, you would see me anything sports wise. And even today, like anything sports. My wife's really confused right now why I'm so into the World Cup, because I don't watch soccer normally, but I'm like, man, this is a championship level soccer. You got to watch that. I can watch, Wimbledon tennis on TV. I just love athletics and seeing people succeed and compete at the highest level. And to be able to get paid to do that is wonderful.
Well said. Thanks for sharing that. Let's finish up with a couple of questions here, Weston. The first being, you've got 2 suggestions for a brand new athletic administrator, of which you are one.
Yeah.
And they need to follow Weston's suggestions in order to become a success. What would your 2 suggestions be?
First big one, like I said, my philosophy is, how can I help you? So I would say a big one is leave your ego at the door. Don't come in thinking that you're the boss or the head honcho over the athletic department. Be more that you're there as a resource for your coaches and your teams to succeed. I let them coach. Like I said, our football team's crazy successful. Coach Cox knows what he's doing. Our girls basketball team's very successful. These programs, our swim team's awesome. I'm not a swimmer. I can't tell a swim coach what techniques to use, but I can offer my help. So, but not only that, not only with your coaches, understand that it's a bigger thing than just you and the athletic department. Get the whole faculty involved. Make sure faculty understands. One thing I do is I make sure that I send out a nice printable schedule for the week that the teachers can print off and hang on their whiteboard that says, hey, here's activities. I give them a quick rundown of how we're doing. Get the faculty involved. Be sure you're taking good care of your janitors and your custodial staff that, has to stay later than everybody else to clean up after games, working well with just everybody in the community. So, work well with people. Understand that everybody has a part in the success, and find ways to really give them their dues. We do an athletic department faculty member of the month, and I really try to focus on faculty members that aren't coaches, those that are just doing their job every day. Was able to find some nice little, championship looking rings, have a goat on them, and give them to the teachers Another one is be sure to keep your personality in things, but don't be afraid to take suggestions that are already working. Like I said, I came up here, things are already going great at Ridgeline. I don't need to come in and change things. So, I kind of put my own stamp on things. Use your personality. Don't do things that are outside of your personality. But I've also been, doing something, for example, working with custodial. He came to me and he showed me a spreadsheet thing. He said, "Hey, this is something that Mike always did." And it was just so nice for us to see. He said, "Would you be willing to do something like that?" And I took it, and it took me an extra 3 minutes to create it. But I do the schedule for our custodian the way they've had it the last 6 to 8 years because it works for them. And it took like I said, it maybe took an extra week or two for me to get used to it, but that's totally been worth it because things just run so much smoother. So, really leave your ego at the door, take what works, and be willing to, don't mess it up if it's not broken. If you see things that you need to adjust, do it. And really over communicate, honestly. You can never really over communicate, but communicate a lot, and don't be afraid of the hard conversations. Hard conversations happen, but it's been my experience both coaching and as an AD. I think hard conversations are 100 times worse in your head than they are when you actually have the conversation. If you're being honest and truthful and you care about the person you're talking to, it's still difficult, but it's not the conversation you have in your head that makes you freak out about everything.
Great suggestions. Thanks so much for sharing. Let's finish with this. Weston, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask?
Gosh, I don't know. I think the questions were great. Like I said, when I first looked at it, a few of them, it's like, well, what have you learned when you first started? And I'm like, well, I did just start, so can't give suggestions there. But no, I think the questions are great. I guess you asked biggest failure, maybe a question about, what's something that you've done in your career that's been successful that you've really been proud of, or, something along that way, kind of double up with both those. But
Well, then let's have you share. What's something that's happened in your career that you've been real successful at that you're proud of?
Honestly, it's relationships, building relationships. I have a lot of things, 20 years of coaching, and not only the kids, but the administration I worked with, the coaches. One thing I'm proud of is I have a huge birthday list, and you'll find that once I kind of have a relationship with you and know your birthday, you're getting a birthday text from me every year. And actually, I had 2 ex-players. It's their birthday today. And I send it out, and it's so nice when I get the message back that's, "Coach, I look forward to this text every year. It's one of the highlights of my birthday. Thank you for still caring about me." And then it kicks in a little conversation, find out about their family. The one I talked to today, he's got a new little girl, talk about, being a parent with them. So really, for me, the proudness is the relationships and the fact that I can go back a long time. As a matter of fact, this past week at Ridgeline, we interviewed for boys lacrosse coach. One of the kids we interviewed started talking about football at Mountain Crest, and he looked so familiar to me. But obviously a little older, a little more weight on him, had a beard, and I'm like, finally I had to ask him, like, "What number did you wear at Mountain Crest? Because I can't place you." And he goes by Bo now, but in high school he went by BJ, and he's like, "Well, I went by BJ," and it just clicked. I'm like, "Oh yeah," and he's like, "Yeah, I knew you." He goes, "I remembered you coaching me, but," he goes, "I didn't know if you'd remember me, but finding those relationships, like I said, coming back up here, there was a lot of relationships I built my first couple of years at Mountain Crest, and I still have them with coaches and community members. So, for me, the biggest pride is I see the relationship, and I see they talk about the coaching tree, the influence tree, to see how big and far that goes. And I have a lot of kids that I've coached that are now coaches, and they talk about building relationships with their kids, and they are always asking for advice. So those are kind of the things I'm probably most proud of, that I love. Wins and losses come and go, trophies come and go. I've been a part of state championships, and really when I look back, I don't think of the game, and I really don't even think much about the trophies or anything like that, but I think about certain practices and things that have went on there.
That is well said. Thank you for sharing. On that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Weston Zabriskie, the Director of Athletics at Ridgeline High School up in Cache Valley in Utah. Weston, can't thank you enough for being on the podcast today.
All right. Thank you.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.